Hello, this is Otto Sevilla, your host of the DMV Business Show. Welcome. And today we have a very special guest. David Benson is the president of Architessa. Welcome to the show, David. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Oda. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Oh, my pleasure. Before we go into your story and background, if you can give the audience, David, just a brief general overview as far as who is Architessa and your role there, please.
Sure. Yeah. So again, David, president of Architessa. Our name used to be Architectural Ceramics as of February of 2021. So we just rebranded and went through a whole name change. But we've been in business for 36 years. We're a tile and stone distribution company that's based out of Rockville, Maryland. So we're homegrown in Montgomery County and have grown from there upward down south to Atlanta, but we sell nationwide. So
fantastic. Okay, so headquarters is Rockville.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. So if we can go all the way back. Are you originally from the DMV area, or where did you grow up?
Yeah. So personally, it's my stepfather who actually started the company in 1985, and his name was Larry Sullivan. And then my mom, Betty Sullivan, really took over the reins in around 2000, 2001. But I grew up here. I grew up in Montgomery County, from Laytonsville to Potomac, local graduate of Walt Whitman High School in Bethesda. So definitely love Montgomery County and love the area here.
That's great. So growing up in a family business, were you involved at an early age, or how was it growing up? Or were you just focused in school and other activities?
Yeah, so early on, my mom met my stepfather when I was about 8 or 9. So they got married, and literally once they got married, I was helping out in the showroom at 9 or 10 years old, putting away, cleaning up. Friday nights was like pizza and cleanup night, not pizza and movie night. So I had that experience. It just my childhood before that. Came from a divorced family, so my mom was a single mom growing up those first few years, and it taught me a lot. It definitely taught me a lot of patience and how to work hard. And seeing my mom work that way, as well as my father, who was a single dad as well. So.
Sure. Do you have any siblings, or is it just you?
Yeah, so I actually, from my mom, I have one biological sister, and this is the funny story. I have 3 stepsisters, and then together they adopted 2 girls. So in total, I have 6 sisters.
Wow, so you're the only boy.
Yep, the only boy in the pack.
It's almost like the opposite of my family, David. I have a younger brother, and then myself, I have 3 sons. So there's a lot of boys in my family tree.
Yeah, I actually have 2 daughters and a son now, and the two daughters came first.
Okay.
And I was praying. I was like, Lord, you let there be one boy. So, finally got the boy last.
There you go. That's good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before is your sister older or younger than you?
So 2 of the biological sisters younger, but 2 of the stepsisters are older. So thankfully I was 3rd in the mix. And so the other ones were younger, and it was easy to be a little bit more of a leader with them, but they always wanted to, play with my things or, be a part of what I was doing.
Sure.
So,
how was it growing up? You said for a brief moment there, David, your mother was a single mother, and you're the oldest one, and you have a younger sister, and you mentioned she was working hard from your recollection, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she was working at a company called Larry's Cookies. She was working for my grandfather. She was doing multiple jobs just to, keep funds for the 2 of us. And so I was very thankful that she met my stepfather, and They've been together since, and it's I just learned a lot of hey, you got to put in the hours. If it's late at night, you got to get the job done. So just seeing that at a young age, and definitely looking back at it at the time, of course I wanted my mom around more instead of seeing my grandmother or something like that. But it definitely, I look back at it and it's like, hey, you got to work hard if you're in a certain situation. So
Sure. So throughout elementary, middle, high school, besides working at the family business, were you also into other sports or other activities, or were you pretty much just busy with school and the business?
yeah, actually soccer was my sport of preference, soccer and basketball. I did play varsity at Whitman, basketball for 1 year. And then I was into acting. Actually, I got into acting in high school and had a talent manager. So locally, she was in PG County, the manager, Linda Townsend. And I even went to LA for a summer to try it out. And yeah, I got a few gigs here and there, but it just didn't pan out. I honestly, around the movie sets, you sit around the movie sets and you don't work that often. Most of it's sitting around waiting for all the camera and the audio to get set up, as an actor. So I'm not a very patient person. So I moved on from that.
I'm curious, that acting phase, was it during high school or was it before or after?
Yeah, it was in high school, junior and senior year. Actually, I did a bunch of theater. I was in choir. So I had that experience. And for choir, we sang in Canada. We sang at the Kennedy Center, the National Building Museum down in DC. So it was definitely got you out there in front of people. And I had one acting class freshman year. No, before college, I went to Harvard summer school, and I took some acting classes there up at Harvard. And it's just a different mindset. You have to be very creative, learning things about improv as well as formal, acting. But it was just one of those things. I'm very diverse in like my experience. So from acting to the tile industry, and then sports, I love to do it all. If somebody said, "Hey, David, want to do this?" I said, yes. So.
I'm sure also acting probably came in handy, David, when it came to the business side of things, right?
Yeah, so that actually where I've gotten a lot of experience on the sales side at a really young age, I'm talking about 18 or 19. So the acting took me to LA for that summer. I needed a job, the same way, my mom wasn't able to, pay for things and do that. They weren't going to support it in that fashion. So I had to get a job. I went door to door. So I went, grassroots campaigning for HRC and California Public Interest Research Group, just going door to door to collect. And the acting tied in with that really helped me get out there, not be shy, learn to not listen to a no and not give up. So probably similar with you in commercial real estate.
Yeah, exactly. With the acting, you go in door to door. So you're going door to door, and what? You're pitching or?
Yeah, so this was to raise funds and lobby in California to support. I think it was supporting, less oil companies, on the water line. I honestly, it was 20 years ago, so it's hard
Sure.
to remember.
Okay, so this was something you were doing on the side while trying to get acting gigs, right?
Exactly, yeah, and honestly, within 2 weeks, they promoted me to like a manager level, because most of the people that go door to door, they don't have a lot of experience, and because I grew up in the business, I said, hey, yeah, I'd love to manage a team. So after 2 weeks, I was managing a team of 6 people, and where their routes were going, and So a little bit less of the door to door, but it was it was still a fun experience that summer.
I'm curious, were you doing even back then during, I guess, high school years, were you doing things differently when it comes to door compared to the other people?
Um, oh, I'm trying to recall some like specific examples, but uh, I think it's more just my personality and smiling. Like, and on that level, I would go into towns like Beverly Hills, and I would go into other towns that were, the complete opposite of Beverly Hills. So to get somebody to open up in a, 90210 zip code, open up their door, smiling, and that first impression, that first 5 seconds really makes a difference. Like, hey, how you doing today? It's just making them feel a little bit warm and comfortable in the beginning. That was
Sure.
biggest lesson learned.
That's good. When it comes to door, cold calling, canvassing, prospecting, not many people make it. And that's the reason I was asking. There's a lot of no, the majority, I would say probably over 80, 90%, if not higher, are
Yeah.
no's. And that's why it's just a revolving door a lot of times with positions and roles like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. There was a couple folks that, were on the team that weren't on the team the next week, or they wouldn't show back up because it is difficult. I mean, door to door, you have dogs that could be running at you. You have people that, I didn't run into this, but they could have a gun. They don't want people at their door, so you got to be quick on your feet.
It's so true. It just brings back the story. One of our previous guests, he's a founder of a tech company in Northern Virginia. And part of, I think it was college, he was back then, he was going door to door in Southern California selling encyclopedia, back this pre-internet, of course. And,
Yeah.
and these encyclopedias were quite expensive. It was a good amount of investment. And he was like, my territory, he was like, it was rough. People didn't care much about education, let alone an encyclopedia that's going to cost you hundreds or thousands of dollars. But he's like, it taught me a lot of things as far as dealing with different personalities and everything, because you're knocking on someone's door. But he was like, the one thing I found, which I found interesting, he was telling me, is that everyone wanted something better for their children, either whatever they came from, even if it was a rough neighborhood, they always wanted something better for their children. And it was a great experience he had.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I would say there's two differences. Like he was selling encyclopedias, so he was selling an actual product. So when I went out looking for a job, I went to look to sell knives, like Cutco knives, and with Vector companies. And then I went with the HRC. And so looking at the two different things, you're selling a product. So not only do you have to sell yourself and the product, where with like the HRC side, I was mainly just selling myself as a person, understanding what their beliefs are, towards the environment, or, whatever the cause was that we were promoting. And I think there's two different, I learned that experience of selling not a product and then also selling with a product. So it was nice to see both of those. Because I mean, for instance, tile, we sell, a physical product, but it's not always just about the product. You have to sell yourself too. You have to build that relationship.
And all this was during your high school years, right, David?
Yeah, I was 18. Yeah, 18,
Okay.
19. Yeah.
Okay. So after graduating high school here locally in Montgomery County, what happened afterwards?
I went to GW for college. I pushed away the acting side of things. My degree initially was electrical engineering. So I was at GW, again, I joined the choir. My faith, I'm a Christian, so I joined the Christian fellowship group. And then, so I was joining all these things. I was in the emerging leaders program freshman year. So doing all these things, it spreads you pretty thin when it comes to the academic side. But so it was a fun experience the first couple of years, but I totally flipped the switch sophomore year. At the end of sophomore year, I switched to pre-med. So I transferred to the School of Public Health at GW. And then at that point, I actually joined the cheerleading team. So to make extra money, they were paying for scholarships for men to be on the cheerleading team. And I'd never considered it, but my sister, my biological sister, followed me to GW. And so she was a freshman, I was a sophomore. And she said, David, she was on the cheerleading team because she did that in high school and gymnastics. And she said, hey, why don't you come out to the team? Just check it out. And sure enough, there's women there, and they say, hey, we'll pay you $6,000 a year to be on the team. I said, that's easy. And I get to go to the basketball games for free. So, that took over a majority of my time, school and cheerleading, end of sophomore year through senior year.
That's smart, David. I like how you sort of went towards the path of least resistance, where you see probably not a lot of athletes, or let's say guys, going into that because they want to focus on the major sports, basketball, football, whatever it may be, soccer. But there were scholarships, and you say, why not?
Yeah, and the other thing is I was weightlifting because I just did that in high school. So in college, I was weightlifting, and couple of the cheerleader guys were lifting there too. I was like, man, these guys are huge. And so just, I was just impressed by, the technique, the skill, the strength that it takes to do the sport. And it was an awesome experience. I did it for 2.5 years, and I'm very happy. I met my wife. So my wife joined the team the year after I joined, and we started dating, and we're still together, obviously.
There you go. I was about to just say, I'm sure it wasn't bad being around all these women there.
No, not at all. Yeah.
And there you go. You found your wife.
Exactly.
That's a great story. So you graduated with pre-med from GW, or?
Yeah. So it was a pre-health professional degree, and minor in sports, basically at the public health level. And I could have gone into nursing, I could have gone into med school, but literally the January before graduation, my mom calls and says, hey, it's 2000. This was in 2005. Your dad and I, the company's doing well. Your dad and I, are probably going to retire soon. All through college. So all the Saturdays, whenever I could, I would always work in the showroom on the weekends. And so I still stayed in the business weekly. And over the summers, I would work. Those 3 summers, I worked full time. And she said, hey, why don't you come back? You can work in sales and then eventually take over the company. And this was in 2005. And I said, sure, yeah, I'll give up, the sports training and medical career, and give that up. And here I am today. But it took until 2019 to really become the president of the company. So
it was a long journey. So when you graduated, you said in 2005, right?
Yep.
You start off as just a regular sales associate?
Yeah, I was using those door-to-door skills. So I essentially went out, I did outside sales, going to visit builders. So at that time, we started our commercial division. So we do commercial and residential construction. And it was 2005 that when I started, I did outside development to like builders. So like custom home builders. That was my main focus. Because if you think about a home in this area, if they're building $1 million home, they'll spend 10 grand, 15 grand on tile, like just the tile portion. And so that was my main focus, to go after the bigger, custom builders. And I did that for 3 or 4 years, and became, one of our top salespeople. And then I just went from one role to the next. So I was always involved in some fashion with our customer service side, or the warehouse. And then I eventually became a showroom manager. So we have 6 showrooms now, going to open up a 7th one. But at that time, we just had two showrooms. And so I managed one of the showrooms and gained more experience by managing people versus just doing it myself. Yeah.
David, when you joined the company full time back in 2005, what was the size? How did it look now compared to how Architessa looks today?
Yeah, so we, in revenue size wise, I think employee count, we had about 30 people, around maybe 20 to 30 people around that. And we were doing 2005, I think 11 million or so. In 2003, we opened up a flagship showroom in Rockville, and we were doing about 3 million a year. And from 2003 to 2005, we grew, very quickly. Like I want to say 11 or 12 million in those couple of years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and now today, are you still with the same? Well, you mentioned before you had two. Now you're on your sixth showroom. So I assume it's a larger organization than how it looked back in 2005, right?
Yeah. So today we're at we're opening in Richmond later this year. So that's 7.
Oh, 7.
So 7 with 2 warehouses, and I'm in our corporate headquarters, which is an office space right on Research Boulevard. And we have about 80 employees now, and we've sort of done a little bit of a wave over the past 15 years where, we hit 30 million. We hit 30 million with close to 100 employees. And then hey, it's a little bit too big. Let's streamline. Let's make this a little bit more comfortable. And now we're growing again, back up. So, I've read a few books. I'm reading one now called Traction. And, it just talks a little bit about that growth cycle. Like, hey, you got to constantly grow. Otherwise you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to die.
That's true. I'm curious with your business, is it so much correlated with real estate or the real estate market? Did you see that sort of downturn back in the crash, I don't know, 08 to 2010 or so, or did you not feel it at all?
Yeah, so I'm very thankful. So in 2004, we started the commercial division. So for 20 years, we were pretty much just doing residential. We had one showroom. Somebody would come in. Just when I say residential, it's like they're just renovating a bathroom or their kitchen. So when we expanded to the commercial side, we were very new at what that looked like. So in the process, you have to get architects to specify a product. You have to know the commercial real estate agents. You have to know the developers. You have to know the GCs. There's all these different players on the commercial side. And so it was just a different mindset. How do we organize our product mix to sell to those type of folks? But going back to your question more so, what was the question exactly?
As far as the downturn, the real estate market back in 08, 2010, and so on, was there any effect there?
Yeah, so in 2008, we had actually just opened up 2 showrooms. So one in Bethesda. Sorry, I was getting a call there. One in Bethesda and one in Falls Church, and it was very detrimental to my parents' personal portfolio. They actually, ended up short selling a couple houses, but in that, vein, they kept the business going. So we kept the 2 showrooms open. It was extremely difficult, to get any business because we had just opened those showrooms. They were very expensive build outs, but we made it through. And I think the positive when I was talking about the commercial is that time the commercial still was going up a little bit. We were getting some nice projects while residential tanked significantly. So it was nice to have that balance of the two different, sales avenues.
In that period of time, you mentioned when you started, you were developing relationship with home builders on the residential side. Was that still your role then during that period of time, or were you also involved in the commercial side and growing that sector?
Around 2008, 2009, I was still managing. At that point, I was managing all of the showrooms, so all the residential side.
Okay.
So there were, I want to say 1, 2, 3. We had 4 in Alexandria. So it was a good 20 to 25 people that I was overseeing. Around 2013 or 14 is when I took over the commercial side as well. So I became our VP of sales.
Okay. And you mentioned back then too, when you started, you quickly became #1 in sales. And it was, you said you were just reaching out to home builders, and I'm sure it wasn't as easy as knocking on door. Well, you tell if you want to share, I'm sure you're not just going to a new community, because that's not where your decision maker is, right?
No, these were builders. Some significant names might be like Gibson Homes or Artisan Builders, TriCrest Homes. There's some bigger custom builder names that, because they had smaller offices, they may have been working out of their home, but they would build $1 to $5 million homes. And we have very unique product that's sort of mid to high end on that residential side. So I was really aiming at those folks versus the production builder, where you needed to be low and dirty, and you also needed to supply the installation and labor, which we're not into. We're just supplying the materials.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're doing your proper research beforehand before you go out there and reach out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. And you said then you went on the commercial side. And as far as now business, David, is it 50-50 as far as residential commercial, or how does that look?
It sort of depends on the month, but mostly commercial we're about 60% commercial and 40% residential. And what has happened really is that we'll get big projects. So we could get, a Ritz-Carlton, which we did a couple of years ago in St. Thomas, and that job alone is over $1 million. So, you get those types of projects that bump commercial way higher. And our investment, in all honesty, is that commercial side of the business, because to hire, it's similar to like commercial real estate, I guess firm, if you were to hire one rep, they can work from home, they have a little storage space. Whereas if on the residential side, I need to build out a showroom, that's going to cost several hundreds of thousands of dollars to build out a showroom.
Mm-hmm.
And a long-term lease. So
that's very true. I'm curious though, I understand that there's probably a higher expense to the residential side, just like you mentioned. But as far as the margin, is it the same, or is there more margin with the residential client than the commercial one?
Yeah, the margin is definitely higher on the residential side. So we're, even though the projects could be smaller, they're not $100,000 projects.
Mm-hmm.
The tend to be higher, mainly because of the type of products that people are picking out.
Yeah.
So if they're picking out, a fancy glass mosaic, they would never use that type of product commercially, unless you just had an owner of a building who wanted it very badly. So.
Okay. So I guess from your perspective, it's better to focus on sort of the larger customer and client, even though there might be less margin, but it's a bigger amount overall in total.
Yeah, and the way that we market both commercially and residentially is having a concierge service. So not only do all of our sales folks know about tile, they know what it takes to install it, where it should be used, and really talking about with the client, whether it's a homeowner or a designer building a building, what are their styles that they like? What do they like to do on the weekends, that you can sort of pull in, whether it's colors, or anything at all. So we call it concierge service because we talk about the project as a whole, not just, hey, you need a tile for your backsplash. Here's a white one and a gray one.
And you also manufacture them, right?
So we don't manufacture anything ourselves. We do OEM materials. So I will design materials and I'll have a factory make it for us. That is about 10 to 15% of our product, and then the rest of it we take what a factory makes. A factory could make, let's call it, 1,000 products, but I may only take 50 of them because I want to be very selective in what I show. But that's not to say if somebody comes in and says, hey, I'm looking for something like this, then I can go back to the factory and I know, hey, I know that other products are out there to look for.
Sure. Okay. I understand.
Yeah.
What would you say now, David, that drives and motivates you?
Well, number one, the family. Not only my personal family with my kids and my wife, but our 80 employees, we run it, pretty corporate, from our technologies and the operation of the company and our meetings. It's pretty corporate, but we're still a family. So every one of our employees, I really try to find out more about them personally and what their goals are. And how we've done that is, if people move, we try to keep them on board. I just had an employee last year. She got engaged and she moved to Florida and she was working in Alexandria, Virginia. And we said, hey, stay on board with us. And so she's working for us in Orlando.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's, I don't know. That's pretty much the major driver, is just the focus on the family and our core values. We made these 4 core values that we all believe in as a leadership team. And if I wake up one morning and I'm like, nah, I don't feel like it, I'm held accountable not only by the core values, but the rest of the team.
Sure. Well, what are your 4 core values?
So community, character is our first one. So we lead with character, then the community. We have results that matter. So in any organization, we do want to sell, to maintain the business. And then lastly is innovation. So innovation was my personal favorite, even though it's last. But we always want to strive to have the newest thing, as long as it works with our process and our organization. But we're big on technology. We use salesforce.com, soup to nuts. It's our only system that we use pretty much. So we're fully in the cloud and remote. And now our next step is e-commerce. So I'm really pushing the innovation, envelope with the tile industry. You don't see that much, innovation in the tile industry. So
you don't. And I love how you embrace technology, because like you just mentioned, in your industry or even similar sectors that I've come across, they're not all about innovation or embracing tech. And I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people in similar sectors that you're in still using paper for invoicing, for whatever it may be, for billing. And I'm just like, really? It's a little shocking, but not surprising.
Right. Yeah, I'll be honest, there's a company locally, they're $1 billion company, and it's Ferguson Enterprises. I'm sure you've heard of them, but they're owned by English company, I believe. And Ferguson, $1 billion company, I'm pretty sure still prints out, in their warehouse, like a 5-layer color copy printer thing. And I think to myself, for us, everything's online. The customer, when they get a delivery, they sign on an iPad, they can sign on their phone. Everything's electronic for us. So
that's great. And I'm sure that's probably one of the reasons you're able to accommodate certain employees. Like you mentioned that one example that they moved from Northern Virginia to Orlando. Is there a showroom there in Orlando, or is it just the role can be done remotely?
Yeah, so for us, a commercial sales rep is mostly remote. They work at home. They could have a storage unit for small sample sets, but most of our samples are are mailed out from our Baltimore warehouse. So we ship nationwide. People can order samples through our website, or they can order it through the rep. And the outside sales rep, if for instance in Orlando, she'll visit the architects and designers and any related, general contractors or bigger tile installers. So like we're working on a project in Miami right now, actually with CBRE. CBRE is doing a lot of their own in-house design and development for the tenant spaces. So that's just one example, but they're in Miami and I don't have a rep in Miami. So a lot of that is done, just mailing them samples, virtually communicating and doing screen shares. So it's a whole new world there for sure.
Yeah. I'm curious, in that example you just gave, not having a rep in Miami, how are those relationships established? Is it from one city and then it gets transferred to another city, or people just calling them?
Yeah, it's both. It's all of the above, because it could be the designer lives in DC and then they move to Florida and they know our name, but they're at a new firm in Florida and they like working with us. It could be that they found us on a Google search because they were looking up, purple subway tile, and our name came up. So we get leads from all across different avenues. One new lead, which is something interesting in the marketplace, just in materials overall, is called materialbank.com. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but they are owned by the Sandow Corporation, and they warehouse a lot of samples from wood to fabrics to paint to tile, and they generate for us, hundreds of leads every month. And they could be, a lead in California. It could be a lead right here in DC, but designers order samples for free on their platform.
Oh, wow. For in that situation, is it you're paying per lead, or how does that work?
So essentially all the manufacturers or vendors pay, per lead. It's a different fee, based on certain things, but you're essentially paying for that lead.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so that lead is not just Architessa that's receiving it, but maybe there's a few, let's call it competitor of yours, and whoever can sell them and establish that relationship wins it, and right?
Yeah, so let's say a designer at Gensler in DC, they could be working on a office building, and they might order an Architessa sample. They would order a Sherwin paint sample and a wood sample, and they would get it all in the same box. So they can order from multiple different places and get one shipment. So it's sort of the new thing in the design industry.
Yeah. We were just talking about teams here, and I'm sure surrounding yourself with the right team members, employees, is very important. How do you go about there in Architessa finding the right people, putting the right people in the seats in the bus?
Yeah, so currently I am our HR director. So we did have a full-time HR director a few years ago, but we have a platform called Paylocity, and Paylocity has been very helpful in there's an HR component or recruiting component where you can put different ads and jobs, and it farms it out to all the different platforms. And so we get resumes coming in, and then typically my managers go through the first interview process, and then I'll be the second interview. They have to do some surveys. Sometimes we have them do 30, 60, 90-day plans for their area. That's a little bit higher level. But yeah, as far as just recruiting, I'm big on LinkedIn. I think that's how we connected as well. And, just trying to stay out there. I think it's very important to always network and connect with other people, regardless of what industry it is, because, some need can come up from somebody else. I don't know. So I can just be a resource for whoever. It may be somebody in the food industry. You never know.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's all about the relationship, because you don't know, maybe they're not in the industry, but they may have a family or a friend that, there you go. Yes. Yeah. David, starting off with this business just right out of college, what advice would you give to someone? Let's say they were in a similar situation. They want to join an organization where they see that there's growth, maybe a couple pointers, what they should look out for to look out for a company where there's potential, there's growth, and what they can do to move up.
Ooh, that is a good question. I would say number one, be organized, be organized, be willing to open up and be afraid to fail, but also be creative in your thinking, offer ideas and what can make a process better. And then just continually, working hard, not necessarily working longer hours, but working hard and smart. It's very important to put in the hours when needed. But if you're working smart and you're staying organized in that way, and you're creative, I think a lot of my growth has been, I love problem solving. That's why I initially went into electrical engineering, because I love just finding out a solution or how to solve a problem in some fashion. I love math. And so if you can think of out of the box ideas and problem solve, and stay organized in that, I think you'll definitely succeed in whatever, opportunity is, whether it's tile or something else.
I love that mindset you just mentioned as far as just solving problems. And it's interesting to hear, because I see people that there's problems at work with whatever role they have, and it sort of gets to them and they get bogged down, and then they might be stressed or whatever it is, instead of trying to find solutions and alternatives to it. Yeah. And especially when you're moving up, you're going to have bigger problems, bigger things to solve. And that's just part of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, half of my day is figuring out solutions of a problem or a situation that would have come up. So problem solving is extremely big, whether it's a pricing scenario or you're trying to fix a contract. It could be anything.
Is there any pointer as far as what an individual could look out for when joining an organization? Because there's companies out there, and I think you made a comment earlier that you're always growing, if not you're going backwards or along those lines. But there's companies you come across that they say they want to grow, but what they're telling you verbally, the actions are two totally different things. Some of them are just satisfied, just coasting along instead of trying to go this way. And for a person like you coming out of college back then in 2005, you want to, obviously you want to be employed, but you also want to make sure you're in the right ship, and hopefully it's going this way and not just here or down there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, setting the vision at the top is extremely important. So for me, it's going to be very important for me to say, hey, this is where we want to go as a team. And I can't take us there by myself. And I think any or any colleague or staff member coming out of college should really look for those things. Ask those questions in the interview. Ask, hey, what is your marketing team doing? What is, your operations team? Ask what kind of projects they're working on. And if there's not really an answer to, hey, we're doing this in here, we're doing this in here, then there's probably not much growth in that sector. So, and I know there's a lot of companies that are very comfortable. We're right here. We're going to be, 10 employees. We're going to be $3 million a year. And we're comfortable with that. But I just think you've got to change and grow, whether it's in IT, in operations, accounting, all the different departments. You've got to always work on streamlining your process and not necessarily growing in dollars, but just growing in the word growth is confusing sometimes, because people ask that in the interview. I want to see a growth. Well, to you, what is growth? Is that money? Is that position? Is that management? Is that title? So it's really understanding what that growth means to that individual person.
That's some great advice. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are they any particular habits or traits, David, that you think have influenced you day to day, whether in business or on the personal side of things?
I would say, some of my habits would be exercising. So I'm exercising 3 to 4 days a week. I'm an avid Peloton rider. I love riding my bike now that, throwing girls up in the air, women in college, it's a lot of toll on your body. So, between running and, I did 100-mile bike ride a couple months ago. So, keeping active. Another habit would be, like I said, I was a Christian, so being in the Word, that sort of, it really calms me down. It's something that I go to when I get stressed. So that's, and if I put my trust in that area, then I know I'll be okay. So, those are probably the two biggest habits. And then my wife is always pushing my health. So, eating right, regardless of what it is. She is absolutely right. If you eat poorly, it will affect how you feel throughout the day. So, yeah.
That's good. It's true though. What you fuel yourself with, it does affect you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say is your biggest challenge with your role at Architessa today?
The biggest challenge for us, and this has not been, it's not just today, it's been over the years. We are, still a small family owned business like we've been. And the challenge all the time has been capital. We have to fund our business with whatever we make. And in order to have that core value as innovation, we have to be strategic. What do we put our funds into, at the right time? And is that the right decision? So, that honestly, that's really the biggest challenge. I wouldn't say it's, there's always the problems of finding the right folks, or, is this location the best location? But, when it boils down to it, if you had huge investments, it does make life easier. I mean, I'm very extremely thankful the past year, even though we struggled during COVID, the government money, that PPP loan, we got 2 of those as a company, and that helped immensely. So, I mean, that's probably the biggest struggle, is where to invest your capital that you do have.
David, if you had, hypothetically speaking, unlimited capital right there, how would you put that to work? What would you do?
I would definitely grow. So our model of growth has been, in Baltimore and Atlanta. We opened up these smaller showrooms, about 1,800 square feet. And so they can act sort of in a dual way with residential and commercial. So where you can invite and have these little happy hour events kind of with commercial designers. But yeah, just opening up small little showrooms like that, which we're going to do in Richmond. And then having the commercial outside sales rep. So doing those little little showrooms and expanding to me, it's second tier cities like, Nashville or Dallas or Austin, spreading those across the country. So that's honestly, if I had unlimited capital, if we could open up, 20 more of those, we would be, a lot larger, and it would be worth it.
So these showrooms you mentioned, they're roughly about 1,500, 1,800 square feet.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And are they retail or flex space, or?
It's on its flex space. So each one of them varies significantly. We have the one in Baltimore is on a retail level of a 10-story building. The one in Alexandria is a small showroom in a row house. Atlanta is literally an old warehouse turned into, more showroom type space. And there's 2 architects in the same complex. So, it works out. Richmond is going to be the landlord wanted it to be a restaurant, but he couldn't find a restaurant. So we're going to take it over. It's right on Main Street. So it varies on the location. And a lot of it has to do with, is it central to the commercial design firms? And is it in a nice part of town that sort of gets some traffic?
Sure. And it sounds like it almost acts as a community hub for you and your potential clients for them to come in and host these events, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The one in Richmond will be fun because it has an outdoor patio.
Oh.
That he was designing for outdoor seating for the restaurant. And so I think it's a perfect location for us to advertise some of our exterior materials, and host people at the same time.
I like that. That's nice.
Yeah.
What do you know now that you wish you would have known at the start of your career?
Oof. That's a tough one. I wish I would have known how much work I was going to have to put in. I think initially when I came out, and this is probably actually similar for a lot of the younger folks that I interview, when, they're coming, right out of college, they want, this right away. And I was thinking, hey, I'm going to take over my parents', $10 million business right out of college. But I could have just had somebody slap me in the face and be like, this is what it's going to take to get there. So.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think probably the media may have a small role there, just because you hear all these stories, all these overnight success stories in a year or two. But in reality, the majority of these business owners or entrepreneurs, if that's the route you choose to take, it's not a 1-3 year type of growth. And then you're going from 10 to 100 million now, let's call it. It takes a lot longer than that.
Yeah, there's not very many Pelotons out there.
Yeah, no, it's very true. When I say the word success, David, what do you think of? Do you think of a person or a thing, or what comes to mind first?
You cut out there for a second.
Oh, I said, well, when I say the word success, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
I think that it goes to one of our core value behaviors, which is making happy and loyal customers. To me, that's success, because not only is your team happy at that point because they're doing well, but your clients are happy, and, loyal customers being, you've got that business coming for years to come. So you don't need to work as hard. I mean, you still got to work a little bit, but if that loyalty is there, it's easier.
Yeah. Having the family business and your mom and your stepfather involved, and you mentioned earlier, as far as reading also books, did you have any specific mentors that come to mind? And if so, what did you learn from them?
Yeah, actually, we sort of missed a little bit of the story along the way in my years of managing when I was VP of sales. So I was the youngest member at 25 to join EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and for several years, actually. So I was in that because I had an executive role, and that small group taught me a lot. The 5 guys that were in that group, they were running their companies, that, and I was also in Vistage for a couple years. So having that small group and just building other business owners. And now I'm on the board for the CTDA, the Ceramic Tile Distributors Association. And I'm in a small group with, a tile owner in Chicago and California and Florida. And so just having those relationships and seeing what they do with their companies versus what we do. And I'll be honest, the cool part is, and I don't want to come off as proud, but the team that I have built here from all those companies that I've been in those small groups with is pretty, I feel like we're in the top 10%, just as far as teams go, not necessarily revenue per se, but what we're executing here and how the business operates, I feel like is in the top tier. So anyway, it makes me feel good, but I've had a lot of good mentors. We've had consultants over the years. I mean, I have one book on my desk, this is Mastering Leadership. So we've gone through different things. That's the leadership cycle, but always having something that you're reading is very important to that success.
I love how you invested at an early age. You mentioned at 25, when you were VP of sales there at the company, and you joined it EO, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And you were also with Vistage. And, there's obviously, besides your time, there's also an investment monetarily going into these groups. And I assume it was well worth it from what you're telling me, right?
Yeah, it was definitely worth it. I was in EO for 5 years, Vistage for 2 years. And it was worth it for those years that I was in them. At a certain point, the time investment, it does become a lot. And it's only called back more because I have 3 kids. So, my oldest is 9. So you can imagine 9 years ago when I was, 29, I had a lot more time to devote. But now not as much to the outside stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we get busy. My oldest is 10. He just turned 10 last month in July, and it's activities. They're in different activities, and you almost become the Uber driver for them. Let's call it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coaching my son's youngest, my son who's 6. He's about to turn 5, but it's the U6 group for soccer. And I was exhausted yesterday. It was the first practice yesterday, and I've coached the other girls' teams as well in soccer. And you still go out there and you have fun and you run around, and I'm sweating my butt off with a bunch of 5-year-olds.
Oh, yesterday was hot too, David. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was about degrees.
I remember I took yesterday. My youngest is 5, and I took him to his first jiu-jitsu class. And yes, and he liked it. And we were indoors, of course. It's a martial arts, a studio academy, but you can feel the hotness. So I can't imagine running around in the sun. There's no shade in the soccer field.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, the kids, we did I think we did 10 water breaks in an hour. So.
And I'm sure with those water breaks, there's also bathroom breaks following afterwards, especially you said there are 5 and 6.
Oh yeah. Thankfully the boys, I didn't get anything yesterday, but with the girls were always asking, I need to go to the bathroom. There's no bathroom on the soccer field.
So you said your oldest is 9 and you have a 5-year-old, and how old is your middle one?
And I've got a 7-year-old.
Okay, so they're almost very close to mine. Is 10, he's 7, he's turning 8 in October, and then my 5-year-old.
Okay, yeah, it's basically the same.
Yeah, almost the same age.
Yeah, they tried, I think it was one of the karate places, and my 2 youngest they need to run around, and we thought for sure, because they tackle all the time, we thought maybe karate, jiu-jitsu, and it was a little bit too slow for them. They literally need to run around in circles.
Yeah, so maybe soccer is it.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
So David, what does the future hold for you and Architessa? What does the next couple of years, next 5 years look like?
I mean, like I said a little bit in the commercial growth, that's our goal. I mean, we're bringing on a VP of strategic accounts. I have a very strong leadership team. I have, besides the new hire, I have 3 other commercial sales managers who all have over 10, 15 years experience. So, and they're roughly, middle-aged, I would say. So the growth is, we hire people under those folks, and just keep growing it commercially. And then expanding our online e-commerce platform. So we launched the e-commerce website in February, and I want to have the best tile website. I mean, I really do. So our hope is to add like a trade program on the website very soon. But yeah, that's some of the short-term growth. And then, you know, who knows? I mean, 5-10 years from now, if we have a bigger company, you know, and we can either buy or merge with, you know, other tile companies and, you know, across the country, that's something that's happening. Consolidations are happening in the industry. And it's easier to grow in a market with somebody who's already doing well there. So that's some of the things that we're looking at. So yeah.
And speaking about growth and consolidation, it is true. You're seeing it a lot. And what I'm seeing too is a lot of these private equity funds. They're giving you the capital needed, as you mentioned, as far as the lack of capital earlier. And you're now becoming that platform where you can go buy and acquire other similar type of businesses, and you now become the company platform.
Yeah, and I think the cool part is I've had conversations with folks about that type of thing. And that's not necessarily one of the reasons we changed, but I think having that Architessa one-word name instead of architectural ceramics, you begin to have a platform name. Like, not only is it tile and stone and wood, but, you know, is it a different product? Maybe like not necessarily like a Nordstrom's or a Starbucks, but that one-word name where you can sell, you know, a plethora of materials under and become a brand versus just, you know, a tile company. We really want to push our brand and make Architessa that, you know, tile brand name that you think of when, hey, I need to redo my bathroom. Hey, have you looked at Architessa? You know, that be that brand name.
And you know, it's very true. When I go to your website, by the way, it's top notch. I can feel it just coming in, just that this is a brand. This isn't just some vendor that does tile or it sells tile. And so so far you're doing such an amazing job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I know we were talking earlier about the family and coaching. So when you're not busy with work, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
Oof. Well, my wife and I hiked Old Rag last weekend.
Nice.
That was just, you know, we dropped the kids off at the in-laws. So usually it's along lines of something athletic, you know, or an activity. Yeah, I mean, my wife and I met, you know, doing cheerleading. So we're very active people, and anything on the bike, you know, I like to bike now. But yeah, there's not too much free time for that. You know, we're doing a anniversary trip at the end of next month. But you know, any kind of activity is what we go for.
That's great. Where are you heading to next month?
Actually, St. Lucia.
Ah, okay.
Don't tell my teammates that.
Okay. But it's just you alone, correct? Without the children?
Yeah, we've been married. It'll be our 13-year anniversary. So
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
That's good. It's always nice when you're able to get away and just have some adult quality time.
Yeah, and the cool part is too, we're working with a project at the St. Lucia Airport. So unrelated, but I will probably look at the space just to see what they're going to be renovating.
Hey, business expense, why not? Right? Let's write it off, baby.
Exactly.
Hopefully the IRS is not listening to this. I'm sure they're not.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, that's great. David, where can people find out more information about you and Architessa?
Yeah, I would just really say go to architessa.com. You know, everything is on there. Visit our locations page, stop by one of our locations from, you know, Baltimore to Atlanta. We have locations, and like I said, our sales team is there to help. If there's any designers listening, you know, please check out architessa.com and order samples. And on the commercial real estate side, certainly we can it's good to be connected with real estate side and developers, because we know about projects at the architect level, even before, because, early on, because they're starting to build the concept around the project. And so they're always asking for samples, but yeah, just check us out online.
Great. David, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Otto, it's good to meet you, man.
Yeah, same. Take care.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.